Welcome to Doctors at Work. My name's Matt Daniel, and this podcast is about doctors' careers. It's part of my mission to help doctors create successful and meaningful careers. Today, I'm having a conversation with Boo O'Brien, who has had a rather unusual career. She has lived in multiple countries and has practiced as a doctor in multiple countries. Currently, she's working as a GP in Australia, and she's also working as a voluntary-assisted dying practitioner. We talk about her career, and she tells me that for her, career basically has evolved through a series of organic steps. She was focusing on what she was enjoying at the time and what opportunities came along. And having that backbone of being trained in general practice meant that no matter what else she explored, she could always return to general practice. And she has explored working as a breast physician previously and currently works as a voluntary-assisted dying practitioner. Her top tips are to look after yourself. Life changes all the time, and a focus on life balance is important for a satisfying career and personal life. Welcome, Boo. Tell me a little bit about yourself.
Thank you, Matt. I have had a rather hodgepodge life of living in many countries. So I was born in Malaysia, and I went to primary school there, and then I went to boarding school in England. My parents were both doctors, the real South Asian history. They came up from very much working class families, and it was do better for yourself. And they worked very hard and spent all their money educating the three of us. So in Malaysia at the time, there was a quota system. So as a Ceylonese or Tamil Sri Lankan there at the time, we had about 2 places in each medical school class because, we were the minority race, even though we'd been born there. So all 3 of us went abroad for education. So I went to a great boarding school in Cheltenham in England, loved it. And then I went to medical school in the College of Surgeons in Dublin, obviously the best medical school in the world. My older brother was there before me, and I just saw what great fun he was having. My father had more practical reasons for sending him there than me. My father had done some of his postgraduate studies in England and Ireland in the 60s, and remembered signs in England saying no blacks, no Irish, no dogs. And he said, well, you're better off going to Ireland because, less risk of that there. And you're with the Irish there. So, and he was right. So loved my time in Ireland, fell in love and fell out of love, and somehow managed to get through my medical 6-year degree. Made phenomenal friends, but had a great education as well. And then, do you want me to go on about where I went to next?
Yeah, because I know sort of you've done lots and lots of stuff that hasn't
Yeah.
been the
Yeah.
conveyor belt career. Yeah, so yeah.
So, in that time you could, and I'm not sure how it works now with F1, F2s, etc., but in that time you could make up your own GP scheme. You could apply for 6 monthly jobs, where you wanted to. And I didn't have a Irish passport, and it was a small country. So I went to Scotland because I knew someone there, and I kind of made up my own scheme in Stirling in Scotland and Edinburgh. So I did lots of, because I hadn't really decided what I wanted to do. I did lots of different specialties, but I specifically enjoyed pediatrics and emergency medicine. So I did a year of those each. And then I did geriatrics. They had a geriatric hospital. They had an ENT hospital. I did obs and gynae, psychiatry. So I had a good, sort of exposure to all of them. And by that time I had met the man I was going to marry, and I really wanted children. And I thought, I really love emergency, I really love pediatrics, but I really can't, envisage myself sort of having a family and really giving both the time they require. So my compromise then was to do GP. It wasn't sort of, oh, I'm going to go for GP because it's easier. My thought was, I love the idea of people coming into your room and you don't actually know why they're coming, and then the whole seeing lots of kids things. So I decided then that I would do my MRCGP. So again, I couldn't do that year in Ireland because I still didn't have an Irish passport. So I ended up doing that year we went back to Ireland, got married. We had my two daughters there, and then I did some rural locums there while I could, because you didn't need your membership of GP to do it. And it was wonderful. I loved it. It was like Doc Martin. I'd go to little country towns, and the local GP, actually, they were all men. Maybe it's changed now, but I would work from their front rooms. I would go and see patients at lunchtime. They would put me up in their houses. Their housekeepers would look after me. There'd be a receptionist that came in every morning. You had the old card system. And it was just, yeah, it was very Doc Martin. And I really enjoyed that. So I thought, well, I am headed in the right direction. So we moved to Birmingham, where I could do in the UK, because my brother and sister-in-law, who are both medics there, had kids. And we thought, well, the cousins can live near each other. And so I did my GP registrar year there over 2 years. So I had two young kids, and I did that part-time. And in that time as well, I did something called After Hours Doctor, which was really fun, actually. You had a driver, and they drove you around all these different areas of Birmingham. Now, not many people like Birmingham, but I loved it. But there are areas in Birmingham that you really need to sort of wear bulletproof vests sometimes. But I loved going up, 60 floors up into council flats and things like that, because I had this big, strong driver with me. And it really made me think, I love this thing of going to, well, it was a bit of emergency medicine sometimes. You had the backup of calling an ambulance. So I did that. 2 years. And in that time, we came over to Australia for a family holiday, because I kind of, twisted my husband's arm at the time and said, come on, we're going back for my father's 70th in Malaysia. Let's divert a bit to Perth. Because when I had been doing my SHO jobs in Scotland, I took 6 months off between jobs. I went to an interview, I think it was for psychiatry, and they said, those were the days they'd say to you at the end of the interview, yep, we'd love to have you, we'll see you in August. I think it was August and February changeovers. And I said to them, well, instead of August, can I start in February? And they'd said, oh, why? I said, well, I'm going to take 6 months off and do some traveling. I don't know what it's like now for med students or junior doctors, but those were the days where people still got excited about that. They didn't sort of tell you off for neglecting your career. I mean, my mum did, she was a South Asian medical mum, but my dad was really excited about it.
Yeah.
I'd also been in a small hospital called Stirling Royal Infirmary when Dunblane had happened. I'm not sure if you know about the Dunblane massacre. So, it had taken its toll. I wasn't on duty that day, but I saw how it took its toll on I was doing emergency at the time, but I was on my week off after night shifts. But how it took its toll on my colleagues, and the whole hospital, and I just felt I needed to be away from medicine for 6 months. So in that time anyway, I, traveled a bit, and I decided I'd backpack around Australia and New Zealand. And my favorite place in that time had been Perth. So when I came over with my young family, my husband, who was Irish, discovered he had a cousin who lived in a small town called Bunbury, 2 hours south of Perth, who he reconnected with. She was, 12 years. She is 12 years older than him, big Irish families. And he hadn't seen her since he was 11. We came over, we went to Bunbury. It was home and away, still is to a certain extent. We have our own dolphin colony. A lot of them have names. We have named the baby dolphin competitions. There's a high school that goes down to the ocean. In the summer, the ocean is blue and green. So we left that holiday. I think my middle child, I was expecting my last and third child, but my middle child was about 4 or 5 at that time. And I remember we were on the beach for the 4th day running, I think, and she said, this is the goodest place in the whole wide world.
Okay.
So Cora, my husband's cousin, was a nurse who was just about to retire, and she said, well, we're looking for new GPs in the town, because the guy who comes to my nursing home is 78 years old and he's still working, would you think of coming? And so anyway, we left with the thing that in our minds that if our third child had a smooth arrival into the world, and I still had my actual exam to do, my membership exam.
Yeah.
They call it the fellowship here. We call it, as you know, the membership in the UK. Then we would put pen to paper and start the application.
Okay.
And that's how it happened. And it took us a full year, actually, because it's a really, really long process. Anyone who wants to do it, you have to think about it really before you hit 50 to, because it's a marking system. It's a bit like, when they say, show us your driving license, passport to make up these points.
Yeah.
So you had to, had I hit 50, my marks would have gone down. And I probably would not have got in. So, and Australia changes the way it looks at who they want. They're quite ruthless in how they pick who they want here, which is actually, sometimes quite unethical, but, each country to their own. So things like disabilities and things, they need to know that everyone that they're taking in, including your children, are going to be valuable to the country, going to pay back, So we got in when my youngest was 1 and my other two were 5 and 7. I got in on my job because at the time GPs were needed. You had to work in an area of unmet need for 10 years because generally the Australian qualified doctors don't like to work in those areas.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I was lucky enough that Bunbury at the time was an area of unmet need, although it's only 2 hours away from Perth. So we set up home there, and we came over in 2008.
Yeah. Fantastic. I mean, you've done so many different things, and we're going to come on to what you're doing at the moment. So that I'm interested in the things you've added to your general practice at the moment. But maybe before we go there, those career decisions, you've done lots and lots of different stuff, and it all kind of sounds very fluid. And I'm interested in how did you make those decisions? Was there a plan, or you just went from one thing led to the next, or you did what seemed enjoyable, or how did you make decision?
When I was in Scotland, I was in my early 20s, going into my mid 20s. I just felt I had a lot of time. I was single. And it was literally the times when you would be coming up to the end of your 6 months and you'd say to your consultant, I quite fancy doing pediatrics next. And he'd say, oh, yeah, yeah. And he'd go off and have a word with the pediatric consultant and hopefully say, get this doctor in, she's good, You had to have a good work ethic, obviously, work hard and answer your bleep and, all that kind of stuff. I really enjoyed the teamwork. I loved the teamwork. And if one thing that I didn't envisage in Australia was the total lack of teamwork because it's private practice. So when I was working as a registrar in Birmingham, we were on the NHS, as Liz, and we had better teamwork because there was no competition. We had more interaction with each other. There wasn't that huge pressure to make money. You only had a certain number of hours in the day. So I really had a good exposure to it. So I didn't want to, my main decision maker was, I did all those jobs. The two that attracted me were ED and pediatrics. And I just felt I'd get both in GP land and be able to pick my hours, so around my children and a family life, so, and I think that's important because I think one of the biggest things I've learned in medicine is you need to have balance. Don't pick your career because of the money you're going to make, because you need to have balance that is going to, the job might bring you happiness and contentment, but you have a life. You have people who depend on you. If you're going to have a family, you need to be there for them. You need to be there for yourself because, as we know in medicine, I'd never heard the word debrief. I still don't get debriefing in voluntary-assisted dying, but everyone else on the staff do. So we're renowned as medics for really we need to look after ourselves.
Yeah. I'm interested in what advice you would give to doctors at the moment. So to the people that listen to the podcast, it's quite international, but I think the world that you've outlined, and it's a world that I recognize as well. Yeah, that world doesn't exist anymore because people are people are not selected because of you turn up, you do a good job, you're a good doctor, and then you get
Right.
recommended. It's all, I think, probably pretty much everywhere in the world nowadays, or certainly in the kind of Western world, it's all going to be based on portfolio and points and what papers you've done, and you know how many procedures you've done if you're a procedure specialty. So it's all very much CV based, and portfolio based, and anonymous. And I guess a lot of that is good because it removes sort of discrimination. It removes that if you have a personal conflict with somebody, then potentially that could ruin your career. If you're in a small specialty and you had an interpersonal conflict with somebody, that would be problematic. But the downside is, one of the things that I've observed is that people don't enjoy the jobs in the way that I did, yeah, because it's all about I do this because I get points, I do this because it's a line on the CV, I do this because it's going to help me achieve. And I also think there's competition amongst trainees, yeah, because getting jobs is probably much more competitive than it would have been for you and I in years gone by. So I think people probably see each other as competition. So I don't get a sense of that collaboration that maybe you've described and I also
Yeah.
experience as a trainee. So I think it's a very different world. Anyway, question: what would you say, sort of, to that's the world that exists now? People in the 20s, that's the world they operate in. What tips and advice would you give to them?
Gosh, I think it's a great shame, really, because it does take away from the whole joy of, even working as a team, etc. I don't know. I mean, from a GP point of view, because that's been the majority of my time. My career has been as a GP, about 30 years. I've also been a breast physician in that time for 5 years, and then now a voluntary assisted dying doctor. For me, it's always been about connection and communication. And as we all know, a CV doesn't tell you if a person's capable of doing that well. And that's what we're losing in medicine, that you can employ a person because they've got all these marks or these papers, and then realize they can't actually have a conversation with a patient. They can't break bad news. They can't support a patient. And I think that's a great shame, so I'm probably, I'm very slow to recommend medicine to anyone who has very, put it this way, none of my children are doing medicine because it's changed so much. But I think you really have to be fussy that your own needs are met. If you're finding it really competitive like this, is it the right thing for you to do?
Mhm.
I'm not sure that I would have got through that kind of, you know, um, sort of competition. I'm not a very competitive person,
Mhm.
but I think I harp on self-care all the time. I think we can get dragged into this thing of all your family and friends being thrilled that you're a doctor, and then you're suddenly training to be a specialist, and there's a high level of stress, anxiety, depression, and sadly suicide in the medical field. And a lot of that is pressure.
Yeah. I hope you're enjoying the show. Please click subscribe so you'll be notified when new episodes become available. This podcast is part of my mission to help doctors create successful and meaningful careers. You can be part of that mission too by forwarding this show to one person who you think might benefit from listening. Thank you. Now on with the show. So the reality is the world is as it is. The recruitment processes are what they are, and you and I can't change that. But the advice then for the people that are working within that would be to kind of to really invest in that self-care, and
Self-care.
yeah, and ask some questions. Is this what I want to do? What are the
Absolutely.
reasons that I want to do that? What's the cost of doing all of these things? And often
Absolutely.
the answer is yes, I do really want to do it, and yes, there's a price, and yes, I'm willing to pay. And through that, then also comes acceptance, isn't it? You sort of say there's a price, and yes, this is a price that I'm willing to pay, and that's okay. You make peace with yourself, isn't it? But
Yeah.
it's that conscious decision making maybe that matters.
Yeah.
I'm
Correct.
interested. So tell me about your voluntary assisted dying role. How did you discover that, and how did you get into that?
I discovered that 2 years ago. So I've been a VAD practitioner for about 2 years, and it's been legal in my state, WA, Western Australia, for 3 years.
Mhm.
Um, I came across it quite by chance, actually, because as a GP, we get, 30, 40 leaflets into our pigeonhole every day about new drugs, about, everything that we're meant to know, because as we know now, being a GP is not about knowing a little about lots of stuff. It's knowing a lot about lots of stuff. Um, I'd had a tough year a year before that. My father had, who was one of my favorite people and my biggest, supporter. He was an anesthetist, and he had died in Malaysia during the COVID time, and I hadn't been able to get to him, and he wanted to die at home, and there was no palliative care in Malaysia. There still isn't. So my younger brother got him home, and he died at home without me or my older brother there. We just spoke to him on the phone. I was 5 hours away on a flight, but of course, nobody knew what COVID would do. I never thought that I'd miss out on that time. And I also saw, I think, the best in people during COVID, but also the worst in people. I mean, as WA as a state we were very lucky. We literally just had our borders closed, and we didn't have the disastrous effect of COVID that you guys did in UK. But we also had lots of people just generally saying, we should just keep our borders shut, for 10 years, 5 years, and of course, these were all people who had their family around them. And I just really struggled with my own, I guess that's why I'm so pedantic on self-care, but I lost my mojo, for medicine, which I'd loved. I'd always loved medicine. And people in general. I just got really, I just lost faith, in a lot of things. And I came across one of these leaflets in my pigeonhole, and I said to my practice manager at the time and said, we have every other Tuesday, we have a education session upstairs. We all have a good lunch and have a chat and learn something. And I said, what is this VAD? Can we get someone in to talk to us about it? And so one of the navigators, who are the sort of key group that run VAD in our state, so they're made up of nurses, social workers, occupational therapists, and they're called Southwest Health Navigators for VAD. They take in the referrals and they fill them out to us doctors, and they keep us in track and they keep us communicating. They are the backbone of VAD, because we couldn't do it really without them. They support the patient, the family, etc. So the head navigator came to talk to us, and she told us about the training. She gave us a few examples of deaths that she'd been present at. We were allowed to ask questions, and yeah, that was it for me. I didn't even link it up with my dad's death at the time. I just thought, wow, this is the first thing that's made me interested in something for 2 years, a year and a half since my dad died, So I went up to her afterwards and I said, I'm quite interested in the training. And then, and it was something like 17 hours online. And I thought, oh God, how am I going to do this? Because we were all struggling, because we're private practitioners at the time. We were really struggling to make ends meet here, because we didn't have payment. We weren't seeing patients that much. We got a pittance for telephone consults, and I thought, I can't afford to take time off. And I got COVID. And it was a time where we had to have 2 weeks off, and I was very well. So I sat and did my training then.
Okay.
It was meant to be.
Yeah, it sounds like sort of a fortuitous coincidence, sort of,
It was
yeah, yeah.
serendipity.
Yeah, serendipity. I'm interested. You also sort of said that you worked as a breast physician. So how did you get to be a breast physician? How did you discover that? How did you decide to go and do that?
So in Australia, we have women over 40 are entitled to a free mammogram every 2 years, or every year if they've got, the risks. And it's free, and it's supported by the health department, and it's manned by clinics around, the cities, that are run by a breast physician who is a GP with a special interest, really, gypsy, and radiologist, interventional radiologist, breast cancer nurse, and radiographers.
Mhm.
So it's a one-stop spot. You go in, you get your mammogram done, you get your examination in history by myself, you get your mammogram done, and then the following week, we get the results back, and then what we do is we either see the patient, if it's all clear, we let them know, but if we see the patient to break bad news, but we also have a plan set up for them, like they're coming in for a biopsy that day, so I'd heard about Breast Screen WA wanting to open a center in Perth, in Bunbury, and so I applied for it and did the training, which was very doable. It was a lot of, as you know, in medicine is, going along and watching someone as well in your own time. And I was happy to do that. And I had a wonderful 5 years of working with women for women, and it was one of the best jobs I'd ever had. And really my Fridays were wonderful because I spent a lot of time as a GP in Australia in a room on my own seeing patients. And then I had this Friday of total teamwork, getting together in the morning, having a look through the 8 to 10 patients that were coming. We'd have a coffee and chat through their films and histories and what to expect, and and then work through the patients, had a bit of a debrief at lunchtime. It was blissful teamwork, really.
Yeah. So again, another example maybe of serendipity. Yeah, sort of a center opened, and you thought, oh, this would align with what I'm interested in. So it sounds like there's been quite a lot of that in your career.
Yes, doesn't it? Yeah.
So it's not that you woke up one day and said in 20 years time I want to be doing
No,
that. Sort of you're turning up and you're enjoying, and then opportunities have come and you've either said yes or no, depending on if
yeah,
it seemed like a good fit.
absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm interested in kind of that model of career decision making. What do you see as good, or what do you see as bad? What are the good sides and the downsides about that kind of model of career decision making?
You mean of just going with the flow a bit and sort of
But
seeing what comes along, or?
yeah, yes, yeah,
I think I always had the backbone of GPing, and the good
yeah,
thing about GPing is that you can increase or decrease your hours.
right, yeah,
So when I started working initially in Australia, I was doing, because it's private practice. I was
yeah,
pretty much doing 5.5 days a week. I was doing Saturday mornings as well. And then as things got a bit easier, I cut down a bit more. So throughout my other jobs, and even now, I'm not a pure VAD practitioner. I still do my GPing.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
that having that backup plan,
yeah.
because at the end of the day with VAD, the politicians could pull it, and but always have your backup plan, I think, don't lose touch.
Actually, that to me sounds really important, because when you know you've got something you can just go back to, then everything else is easier. And in some ways, actually not dissimilar to me, because I always say, well, in a worst case scenario, I'll just spend more time taking out tonsils. Yeah,
Absolutely.
what's the worst thing that can happen? I spend more time taking out
Yeah.
tonsils. Like, it's
Yeah.
and that's an enjoyable thing for me also. Yeah. So
Yeah.
as the other bits of portfolio stuff that I do. Okay, but I guess the key thing there is you've got to have that security that there's something that you can always go back to.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay.
I fully, and the same goes with just general life. I say I've got 2 daughters in their 20s. I always say, do not give up your career.
Yeah.
Keep your registration for whatever you're doing, because things become important at different stages of your life.
Yeah.
So yeah, I love having the GP as a backup. And the good thing about our job as well is, if you want a break, you can have a break and come back to it. You
Yeah.
can do locums. There was a time that I was flying around the country doing a few locums just because I wanted to see different bits of Australia. It's very doable.
Yeah. Perfect. I wonder if I could bring us to a close. Could I ask you to summarize what would be your top tips for doctors at work?
Okay, for me, Matt, I'm very aware that I'm not up to date with the current way, young doctors work and what they're facing. But I just feel, I'm in my 50s. I'm, well-treated menopause woman, but life changes you, and I really see now how important self-care is. Look after your mental health. Nobody else is going to. Nobody looks after us. When I've started VAD, lots of people have said to me, But oh my gosh, what's it like being in that room when someone dies? And I just look at them and go, but we've always been there when someone's died in worse circumstances as
Yeah,
doctors,
yeah,
in ED, in ICU. So look, my top tip is, if you have to cut down, cut down, look after yourself. We're not machines. I find that the burnout level is tremendous.
yeah.
And me in my 50s now, I just don't have the energy to fight the system anymore. And even though guys out there, girls out there in their 30s, 40s might be really sort of, I'm going to change the system. I'm going to really, when you get to my stage, you get tired, and quality of life is so important. So that would be my top tip. Look after yourself. I'm really open about now, mental health, looking after. I get out there and do my yoga, but I also see a psychologist every 6 weeks, because we're humans.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you very much.
Pleasure, Matt.